Hello, welcome back to the Matt Pfeiffer Experience. I am your host, Matthew Pfeiffer, and today we have on a very special guest. We have on Shamika Askew. She is an attorney out of Florida, and I'm excited to have her on. Her and I connected over on TikTok, and she has some amazing content on all of her platforms. So make sure you're checking her out on Instagram and some of her other platforms as well. And she is the owner and founder of the law firm of Shamika T. Askew, and I'll let her correct me if I mispronounced that. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest, Shamika. Thank you very much for joining us and for lending us and teaching us, about the law in Florida and your experience. And I should also say Michigan, because you're also licensed in Michigan as well. So I'm going to kick it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started.
Sure. So thank you so much for having me. You have a major platform, and little old me, I feel honored to even be on your platform. So thanks for the opportunity. So I was born in Michigan. I was born actually in Detroit, Michigan. My parents were never married, so I'm a product of unwed parents. Unfortunately, they were a little toxic, so hopefully they don't see this,
Mhm.
but it's true. I dealt with the dysfunction between my parents. They were going in and out of court for child support. And even when I was an adult, there was an issue with custody and whether or not necessarily custody, but whether or not I was my father's child. And I was
Mhm.
in my late 20s. So my experience from growing up has really led me to be a family law attorney. I do practice personal injury as well. However, my true passion, my calling, I feel like, is more leaning towards family law because I just really want to be that sound voice to my clients to say, look, are we really doing what's in the best interest of the child? Or are you just trying to get back to the other parent? So my desire is really to just to see healthy families. So that's pretty much how I got started.
And so you mentioned that you do personal injury as well. And did you start out in personal injury and then go over to family law? Or did you just kind of always know that you wanted to at least somewhat do family law?
I always knew I wanted to do family law, like
Uh-huh.
when I was a kid and even in
Yeah.
law school. Personal injury became an interest when I moved to Florida from Michigan.
Hmm.
If you've ever been to Florida, you drive around,
Hmm.
there's a billboard of the personal injury attorney somewhere. So I
Yep.
was like, what is up with this personal injury? Why is there everybody around town talking about personal injury? So when you open your own law firm as a new business owner, you'll literally take in anything that walks in your door. But then as
Yeah.
you become more seasoned, you start to, you know, strategize about what's really your passion and what you really want to
Right.
focus on. So
Yeah.
I started out in multiple practice areas, but I ended up scaling back to just personal injury and family law.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to family law, there are so many different aspects of it, and there are a lot of things that are there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of bad information out there, especially
Mhm.
online. You can get bad information from friends and family members, mainly because every situation, every case is different. You
Right.
going into law, what would you say was the biggest surprise for you, whether it be your first case or your first year, where you said, "Oh, this isn't real life," or they don't always do XYZ like we were told, before I was actually an attorney. What was the biggest shock for you?
That's a great question. To be honest with you, I would say I was gullible. When I was in law school, I went to law school because I wanted to save the world. I wanted to help people. And as soon as I became a lawyer, I realize that it is a kind of cutthroat industry. It can
Yeah.
be, especially in family law. There's this saying that family law attorneys, they're civil attorneys because we're not criminal attorneys, but they're not civil.
Yeah.
And that's true. Like family law, from some judges to some lawyers to the clients, it's just bad. It can be
Yeah.
very bad and very draining. So I would say no one prepared me for the dynamics of like how everything works with the court on
Yeah.
down to the client and just the emotions involved and things like that. So that has been such a challenge. I wish I hadn't known that going in. I don't think
Mhm.
it would have deterred me from being a family law attorney, but I definitely would have made sure that my self care was like more. in
Yeah.
place versus
Absolutely.
like, oh my God, I need a therapist, not Jesus,
Yep.
so
hmm
I would have had a therapist at the beginning.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you think that do you think that that law school just doesn't prepare, or do you think that it's just not something that you can prepare for someone for? That it's just something that you just have to do, and you once you experience it, you see it, and you are able to kind of put some systems in place.
As far as the people and how things work, I believe that honestly law school slightly prepared me for it because
hmm
law school was like competitive and it was kind
Yep.
of cutthroat. In my mind, I just figured, okay, these are law school students. Some of these people are just fresh out of college, so maybe it's just a law school thing.
Yep.
I didn't realize that it would translate over into the legal field in and of itself. So that part of it, there was some exposure, not much. But I would say there are things that you just have to learn as you go. Like one
Yep.
thing that law school teaches you is that it's essentially a world where it's self-taught.
hmm
So you don't have the handhold, in high school, you got a teacher, you can get a tutor and all of this, and they want to see you succeed if you're not in class, they're looking for you. When you get to law school, it's all on you.
Yeah.
You have to show up. You have to be disciplined. You have to have the desire to
Yeah.
be there and do the work. So ultimately, I would tell you that there were things that you just figure out as you go.
Mhm.
And I've learned a lot of what I learned because I started my own practice after passing the bar exam.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't have mentors to hold my hand and say, look, this is how you do it. I
Yeah.
eventually got mentors, but it took a lot of searching to say, like, hey, like, can you help me with this? So it can be challenging, but nothing that's can't be overcame.
Absolutely. One of the things that you mentioned is that when you started working as an attorney that you would take any and every single client, and then after a while you kind of started to learn that that wasn't necessarily that not every client was the best fit for you. You mentioned that with personal injury. Was it the same with family law as well?
Absolutely.
hmm
So I typically steer away from clients who or potential clients who kind of have that I just want to stick it to you. I want to be controlling, I'm going to manipulate, and I want you to do this to the other side.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. At the end of
Right.
the day, I have to sleep at night. I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, so I have to make sure I'm in right standing. So I'm not going to do something that's unethical, that's
Right.
just morally not right. So ultimately, people like that, you can kind of tell from the consultation, like, yeah, I don't think this is going to be a good fit.
Yeah.
So sometimes I just frankly tell them, like, hey, I don't think this is going to be a great fit. And some people, I refund their money. And
hmm
others, if I've done the entire consultation and I've given them value, then I don't refund it. But I
Yeah.
do tell them, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to handle my personality because I'm very honest and
Yeah.
direct. And I hold people accountable. So if you're not doing right, I will tell you, like, no, that's
Mhm.
not right. You should not have said that to that, or you should not have said that to mom. So
And obviously you have some ethics and some morals that you stand by, but not everyone has an attorney that does. So we do know that there are attorneys out there who would go down that wormhole. I'm sure you've gone against
mhm.
those type of attorneys. And for those who are listening, who might be saying that like they're looking for an attorney to get back at their ex, what are some potential pitfalls or some problems that could arise by having that type of attitude?
They could be in contempt of court potentially, because people who have that mindset, to me, they don't respect authority.
Right.
So that doesn't matter who you are. It could be the judge, it could be the president of the US. They're not going to respect you because they
Right.
have the mindset that I'm gonna do what I wanna do and I don't care what you say kind of mindset. So the pitfalls could be contempt, it could be jail time, it could be attorney's fees. I mean, there's a laundry list of things that could happen. But ultimately, I'm one of those people where I tell people we're gonna do what's right.
Yeah.
So we're gonna win fair and square.
Right.
That's
hmm
just I'm not gonna play no any dirty games. I'm not going to backstab. There are people who I had one client obviously who's gonna remain nameless. But I had a client who was like, yeah, I ended up getting that information from the email. And I'm like, wait, what email? Like, wait, you have access to an email? Do not do that. If you do, I will
Yeah.
fire you. So,
Yeah.
you do There are times where you know that the parents are doing things and you speculate that that's the case because it's like, how did you know that
Yeah.
without snooping around, right?
Mm.
So those kind of people, if they tell me, they already know. I'm going to get rid of them if that
Yeah.
happens. I will tell them, do not do that. Do not bring me any information that I'm not supposed to have because you're not supposed to be accessing it.
Yeah. One of the things that you're really passionate about is healthy co-parenting, and I think that especially on social media, people don't even believe that that's even possible because of so many stories that you hear, and you typically hear all of the horror stories on social media. Um, and I'm not saying that it's easy, and I'm definitely, so I don't want to downplay it, but what are some steps that people can take from going from completely divorced? Obviously, they don't get along to a point where, what, there needs to be a level of mutual respect here.
It starts with that first respect.
Hmm.
A lot of the times, because the relationship didn't work out, somewhere along the line, both have lost respect for one another. So, trying to gain that respect back is very important. What I typically urge my clients to do is to be cognizant of how they're speaking to the other client or,
Yeah.
to the other side. So, a lot of times, I have found in looking at text messages and emails and correspondences between the parties, they have a way of telling people what to do versus asking. So I
Yeah.
always tell clients like, hey, when you send this, say, hey, this is my recommendation. What do you think about this? Like, let's work together to figure out if this is really best for our child or children
Right.
versus I've already done this. You need to pretty much follow suit. That
Right.
doesn't work. Like, no one likes to be told what to do as an adult.
Right.
So I think the approach is the second most important thing, and then obviously that goes hand in hand with the tone, whether you're
Real.
speaking verbally or in an email. A lot of us have life going on, right? So,
Mhm.
getting an email or a text message where the respect is obviously not shown because there's name calling,
Yeah.
where the tone is off and you're telling people what to do, you're not going to get the outcome that you desire.
Right.
So I a lot of times tell people it's best to be cognizant of how you're, speaking. And also a lot of times I don't see these parents encouraging and supporting like, "Hey, you did great with this. Thanks so much for looking out for Shamika's homework assignment. Like, I appreciate the help." Or even allowing the other parent to be involved.
Mm.
Because I see it more with mothers, I'm only saying mothers. I'm not saying fathers don't do it, but in my time of practicing law, I see it most of the time with mothers. Now, I'm not saying that they don't have a legitimate reason. Maybe dad is not wanting to be involved, but I tell my clients, give the dad all the medical information, the dentist, the doctor, everybody,
Mhm.
and allow him to start scheduling appointments and allow him to do the pickup and drop off. Because if you don't allow it, you can't go into court and say he's not doing it. Have
Right.
you allowed? It's
Mhm.
better to go into court and say, "Look, I've given him the information. I said, hey,
Mhm.
schedule it during your time and let him." But if you don't,
Do,
then you kind of just are defeating the purpose and just
do you
talking.
think that do you think there's a part of people where they are afraid of giving the information because they're afraid of the other parent actually succeeding and that they themselves might look bad in the divorce because that person is actually capable of being a good, healthy parent?
That's a great question. I honestly don't think that's what it is. That
Okay.
could be for some people. I think most of the time it's a control thing.
Right.
It's hard letting go.
Mhm.
So when you're mama bear, when you're papa bear, and you're used to doing everything, the thought of like having someone else step in and step up to the plate and actually start doing things is actually like, oh my gosh, what is this gonna look like? What am I gonna do? Case
Right.
in point, I had a client who did not want dad to have 50-50. And this was before the law changed last year where 50-50 is now the presumption is in the best interest of the child. So it was years ago. And she was adamant, like, doesn't deserve it. He doesn't do this, he doesn't do that. And so the judge eventually ended up giving dad 50-50. And
Mhm.
later on, she was able to go back and say, you know what, that was the best decision for our kids.
Mhm.
Like, he is stepping up, he is doing that. I
Mhm.
just think it takes time. A lot of us don't like change. And it
Mhm.
takes us, a little bit to adjust to something new. But she ended up realizing, like, oh my gosh, I can have a life outside of
Mhm.
just being a mother 100% of the time.
Right.
So it works. I think it's just a matter of just letting go.
Yeah. What do you tell clients when they take your advice, when they listen, when they're genuinely trying to be cordial, co-parent well, and but the other party is just not having it. That they're the ones that no matter how you show up, they're always going to have an undertone. They're always, or even on the flip side, they're always trying to get fresh with you or trying to get back with you, but either way, one way or the other, they're just not respecting those boundaries.
I tell those clients first, and I don't apologize for being a believer, and I tell them I'm a believer, so sometimes my advice may be to pray, okay?
Hmm.
So I do that at times depending on the situation. And then two, I remind clients that you still do your part.
Yeah.
Don't allow the other parent to cause you to act out of character. Because in the end, when we get to court and we're finally before the judge, I can show the judge, Judge, look how my client is responding. Look how she's co parenting. And here's the response.
Mhm.
We're getting nasty responses, or we're not getting any response at all. So don't take matters into your own hands. Keep doing what you're supposed to do, and then allow the judge to fix it in the end. And it is a process. It is. I can't imagine having a toxic
Yeah.
co-parent. I could
Mhm.
not. I was the child in it, but as a co-parent, I'd rather just go to the sperm bank and just not deal with it because I
Yeah.
couldn't deal with some of these clients deal with. I couldn't.
Absolutely. What about when people who are sharing the children, and you hear so many people on both ends of the spectrum. Some people don't believe that parental alienation exists. Then you have other people that it absolutely does exist. I've experienced it. Number one, where do you sit with it? Do you see clients who are dealing with situations like that, and what do you encourage them to do in those type of situations?
I see it happen often.
Hmm.
Obviously, I can't talk about specific cases, but
Right.
when it does happen and either the other parent has removed the child from where they're supposed to be at on a permanent basis, obviously we're going straight to court. Whether it's an emergency situation and I file an emergency motion, or if it's just an expedited motion. So when it happens, I just tell the client to keep great records of you reaching out, saying, hey, I want time with the child. Hey, I
Right.
want to have overnight time sharing. I had a situation where a client just gave up
Hmm.
and it ate me up inside. I cry often. I don't tell people this, but I
Yeah.
cry often about these cases because I just care that much. I
Hmm.
honestly feel like I care too much and I'm trying to, reel it back. But ultimately, it was a situation where I know my client was being alienated for years. And sometimes the judge's responses make you feel like I don't have any hope.
Hmm.
And it's not a final response, it's just you kinda get a little bit of insight to how the judge is, and
Yeah.
so, in that particular case, the client just lost all hope and was just like, "Screw it, let mom do everything." And so that case really hurt me because I knew in the end he would end up with something better than what he had, but it was gonna be a
Yeah.
process. It was
Yeah.
gonna take time.
Have you ever been in a situation where you mentioned two parents going back and forth? Have you ever been in a situation where your client, whether they lost it one time or lost it consistently, and that ended up, messing up the case a bit, or where they may have shamed the other parent online or something like that? I know that's something that's really popular right now.
So I have, yes, I've had a case that I'm thinking about in particular where the parenting plan was very clear about who was to have
Hmm.
what time. And the parenting plan was very clear that both parents were supposed to make joint decisions. And
Right.
this client of mine was a know it all and thought that she can do whatever she wanted to do. And I said, okay, that's your
Mhm.
prerogative. When we get to
Yeah.
court, this is your case, your life. And sure enough, we got to court for the trial, and the judge stuck it to her and said, because you did this, you're gonna lose out on holiday timeshare next year because you kept the kids from dad. So yeah, their actions do end up hurting them in the long run, and I try my best to stop it. I used to, like, be too involved, but I tell them, "This is what it is. If this is the decision you choose to make, just be prepared for the consequence."
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that people are really shocked whenever they, because people always think that they're the ones who are in the right and that they have all the rights and the other parent doesn't, whether they feel like they've lost those rights because of infidelity or
Mhm.
for whatever reason. But people don't realize that the other parents also have rights, and they don't even have to be a perfect parent for them to have for them to have those rights.
For sure.
Yep.
Absolutely. That happens often. It's kinda like and it depends because it's not always mothers. I mean, I do have some fathers who have been pretty much the sole parent doing
Right.
everything. And so sometimes I think it's natural to have that mindset. It's like, I'm the better parent because I've
Right.
been here and I've been doing this stuff, like
Mhm.
you haven't been around kind of thing. And I just think that it doesn't allow for people to have grace, you know? Like, a lot of times people don't think, like, "You know what? Well, maybe they changed. Maybe they're ready to do what's best."
Right.
And while I understand that the in and out of a child's life is not healthy, I still think that child desires for the
Yeah.
other parent to be involved. So, as much as we don't like the past behavior, I think it is important to have a little grace and give the time that they may not have gotten before or wanted to have before.
Shamika, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for being a guest. You've shared so many gems today.
Absolutely.
So I know a lot of people are going to really enjoy today's episode. Can you tell people where they can find you at if they want to work with you, or if they know a friend or family member that wants to work with you?
Absolutely. So my website is www.askew.lawoffice.com. We can be found on YouTube at askew.lawoffice.com as well as TikTok, askew.lawoffice.com, or not .com, it's just Askew Law Office, as well as Instagram, Askew Law Office. So again, at Askew Law Office on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram.
And whether you're watching this on YouTube or if you are listening to this on Spotify or on Apple Podcast, be sure to go down into the description box. That will give you all of Shamika's information if you want to connect with her website, all of her social media handles. Also, let us know. Make sure you comment down below. Let us know something that you take away that maybe you didn't know before watching today's episode, something that you learned from today's episode. Also, go over to her social media and not only give her some follows, but also share her information out, and show her some love in the comment section as well. We always love engagement. With all that being said, thank you very much. This is the Matt Pfeiffer
Thank you.
Experience, and we'll see you in the next episode. You guys have a good one.